You forgive fast, too fast, before they apologize, before they explain, before they even feel the weight of what they did. You forgive your partner when they disrespect you in front of others. You forgive your friend when they take from you without giving back. You forgive your family when they use your peace as permission to demand more. You forgive your coworker when they take credit for work you bled over. And you do it the same way every time, quietly, quickly, like swallowing glass to keep the room calm. You've been doing this your whole life. You're the one who hates tension, the one who keeps things smooth, the one who bends so others don't have to break. You've learned that swallowing pain is how you keep love, that erasing the wound is how you keep people close. But here's what you haven't noticed. They know. They know you'll forgive before they finish hurting you. They know you hate conflict more than you hate being used. They know the line they crossed last time didn't cost them anything, so they cross it again and again. Not because they're confused, not because they forgot, but because you've already forgiven the next 100 hurts they haven't even delivered yet. How many times have you forgiven the same wound? They hurt you because they're sure you'll forgive. And the moment you forgave without consequence, you stopped being someone they feared losing. You became someone they could hurt safely. You forgive, and then you wait. You forgive, and you hope. You hope one day they'll realize, one day they'll see, one day the pain you swallowed will turn into respect. But it doesn't. Because that one habit, the one you thought made you good, is the exact reason they never stop. This didn't start with them. It started long before you knew their name. You learned this young. So young, you don't even remember the lesson. You just remember the feeling of keeping things calm. You were the child who noticed when the room shifted, when voices changed, when tension built, and no one else seemed to care that it was about to break. So you learned to step in before it did. You became the one who adjusted, the one who stayed quiet when you wanted to speak, the one who swallowed what hurt so everyone else could stay comfortable. And it worked. When you stayed small, things stayed peaceful. When you forgave quickly, love stayed close. When you didn't ask for too much, people didn't leave. You learned the rules without anyone teaching them to you. Be understanding. Don't make things harder. Don't be the reason something falls apart. You were praised for it, called mature, called kind, called easy to love. And that felt better than the alternative, because you also learned what happens when peace breaks. You learned how quickly warmth turns cold. You learned what it costs when someone decides you're too much. So you made yourself less. You became the peacekeeper, not because you wanted to, but because it felt like the only way to stay safe, the only way to stay loved. And somewhere in all of that, forgiveness stopped being a choice. It became survival. Being good meant forgiving. Being worthy meant enduring. Being loved meant never holding anyone accountable for the harm they caused. You tied your value to how much you could take without breaking. What did it cost you to be that good? So when someone hurts you now, forgiveness doesn't feel like a decision. It feels automatic, like breathing, like the only response you know, because you've been practicing it your entire life. And every time you forgive, you tell yourself the same story. Maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time they'll understand. Maybe this time they'll see what you've endured. Maybe this time the forgiveness will mean something. You forgive because you're still waiting, not for them to apologize. You've already forgiven before they even consider that. You're waiting for something deeper. You're waiting for the moment they realize, the moment they wake up and see you, the moment all this patience finally turns into respect. You keep the door open because you believe one day they'll walk through it differently. One day they'll stop taking you for granted. One day they'll feel the weight of what they've done. One day they'll change without you having to ask. So you give them time. You give them space. You give them another chance, and another, and another. Because you were taught that forgiveness is what good people do. You were taught that holding boundaries makes you bitter, that walking away makes you cold, that protecting yourself makes you unforgiving, that enduring makes you righteous. Forgive, and you'll be forgiven. Turn the other cheek, let it go. Be the bigger person, so you do. You forgive to prove you're not petty. You forgive to prove you're not cruel. You forgive because refusing feels like becoming the villain. And beneath all of that, there's something quieter. You confuse patience with power. You think waiting is strength. You think endurance is control. You think staying calm while they hurt you gives you some kind of moral leverage. But what if it doesn't? What if patience isn't power here? What if all this waiting is just permission dressed as virtue? How long have you been waiting for someone who keeps hurting you? You forgive. And then you hope. You hope. And then you wait. You wait. And then you forgive again. And while you're waiting, while you're hoping, while you're giving them time to realize what they've done, they've already learned something about you. They learned that forgiveness resets everything. Every boundary you set, every line they crossed, every promise they broke. The moment you forgave, it disappeared. Not just the hurt, the consequence. And that's the part you didn't see. Forgiveness is misread as permission. When you forgive, you think you're releasing resentment, choosing peace, being the bigger person. But they don't receive it that way. They receive it as safety. Safety to do it again. Before you forgave them, there was hesitation, a small pause, a flicker of fear that maybe this time you wouldn't come back. Maybe this time you'd had enough. That hesitation was the only thing keeping them careful. But the moment you forgave, that hesitation disappeared. They relaxed. They learned. They realized the relationship resets without cost. Nothing changed because nothing was lost. You forgave them, so they stopped fearing you. And once fear disappears, behavior doesn't improve. It repeats, it escalates. They're not confused about what happened. They're not unaware of the pain they caused. They know exactly what they did. But they also know you'll forgive. So they test. You forgive. The relationship resets. They test again. You forgive again. No cost, no loss, no risk. They're not guessing anymore. They're observing. They're learning your pattern. And your pattern taught them this: you will reset the relationship every time, no matter what they do. Why would they stop if there's no reason to? And when there's no cost, the crossing doesn't stop. It deepens. It gets worse. Not because they're cruel, not because they planned it, but because nothing stopped them last time. When there's no consequence, behavior doesn't stay the same. It expands. What repeats intensifies. What is tolerated escalates. Boundaries don't collapse suddenly. They erode slowly, quietly, one forgiven hurt at a time. You thought forgiveness would teach them, that your patience would make them realize, that your grace would inspire guilt. But forgiveness doesn't create guilt. It creates safety, and safety removes hesitation. The last time they crossed your line, nothing happened. No distance, no silence, no cost. Just forgiveness. Just reset. So they learned something simple. There is no price. No price means no risk. No risk means no reason to stop. Why would they suddenly stop now? They won't. Because consequences are the only language that teaches, not words, not explanations, not forgiveness. Consequences. When something costs nothing, it's repeated. When someone faces no loss, they don't adjust their behavior. They adjust their estimate of what you'll tolerate. And once they realize there's no cost, they stop being careful. They stop checking themselves. They stop pausing before they act. They stop worrying about losing you, because you've already shown them they won't. Nothing stopped them last time. So the line moves. What used to be unthinkable becomes normal. What used to require an apology now requires nothing. What used to make them hesitate now happens without thought, and you're left wondering why it keeps getting worse. It gets worse because there's no friction, no resistance, no reason for it not to. And once someone realizes there is no cost, they stop being careful altogether. And that's when it turns into exploitation, not misunderstanding, not confusion, not them not knowing better. Exploitation. They know exactly what they're doing. They know you hate conflict. They know you'll swallow the pain to keep the peace. They know you'll forgive before they even apologize. They know your pattern better than you do, and they use it. They test you. You forgive. They relax. They test again. Harder this time. You forgive again. They learn. The line moves. What used to require an apology now requires nothing. What used to make them hesitate now happens without thought. They didn't slip. They tested. And when the test had no cost, they knew they could go further. You've seen this pattern before. The partner who disrespects you in front of others, then apologizes just enough for you to let it go, then does it again. Bolder this time. The friend who takes from you without giving back, who disappears when you need them, who shows up only when they need something. And you forgive because you don't want to lose them. The family member who demands more, criticizes more, crosses more boundaries each time, because they know you'll adjust. You always do. The coworker who takes credit for your work, who makes you feel small, who treats you like you're disposable. And you stay quiet because causing problems feels worse than enduring them. They do it because they know you'll stay. They do it because there's no risk, no cost, no consequence, just forgiveness, just reset. And every time you forgive without requiring change, you teach them something. Your boundaries are suggestions, not walls. They don't stop because you forgave. They continue because you forgave. That forgiveness didn't inspire guilt. It didn't create remorse. It created comfort. Comfort with hurting you. Comfort with crossing your lines. Comfort with taking more than they give. They move freely because they've already been forgiven in advance. They commit the act already knowing the ending. Already knowing you'll be there. Already knowing you'll say it's okay. Already knowing the relationship resets without them losing anything. What would they lose if they stopped? Nothing. So why would they stop? You gave them permission without meaning to. You removed the fear without realizing it. You made it safe to hurt you by making forgiveness guaranteed. And the moment you see this, you stop asking how to forgive. You start asking how to stop being the place where people feel safe being careless. This is something philosophers warned about long ago. Friedrich Nietzsche saw it clearly. He understood that forgiveness, when divorced from strength, stops being virtue. It becomes something else entirely. Forgiveness is only virtuous when it preserves your dignity, when it comes from a place of power, not powerlessness, when it's a choice, not a reflex born from fear, but when forgiveness asks you to shrink, to disappear, to erase yourself so someone else can stay comfortable. That's not morality. That's surrender. Nietzsche warned that excessive forgiveness can mask an unresolved power imbalance, that what looks like grace on the surface is often submission underneath, that when you forgive without requiring respect, you teach others that domination is safe. You were taught that forgiveness makes you good, that endurance makes you strong, that staying makes you righteous. But real virtue does not require self-erasure. A morality that demands your disappearance is not morality. It's control disguised as goodness. Forgiveness that costs you self-respect is not virtue, it's surrender. This isn't bitterness, it's clarity. You are not wrong for seeing it this way. You are not cold for realizing forgiveness has been used against you. You are not broken for understanding that what you called patience was often just fear dressed as principle. What happens when forgiveness asks you to disappear? You've already answered that question. You've been answering it your whole life. You've been shrinking, adjusting, enduring, believing that made you good. But goodness that requires you to lose yourself is not goodness. It's a trap. So forgiveness must change, or it keeps costing you. So what do you do now? Forgiveness was never meant to give people unlimited access to you. You can forgive someone and still step back. You can release the resentment without reopening the door. You can let go of the bitterness without letting them back in. Forgiveness is internal. Access is external. These are not the same thing. Forgiveness is what happens inside you. It's releasing the poison so it doesn't eat you from the inside out. It's choosing not to carry rage, not to replay the hurt on a loop, not to let what they did define your peace. But access? Access is who gets proximity to you, who gets your time, your energy, your presence, your trust. You don't owe closeness to someone who keeps hurting you. Forgiving them doesn't mean you have to stay exposed. It doesn't mean you have to keep the door open. It doesn't mean you have to pretend the pattern doesn't exist. You can forgive and still create distance. You can forgive and still protect yourself. You can forgive and still say no. Distance is not revenge. It's self-respect. Silence is not cruelty. It's clarity. Boundaries are not punishment. They're preservation. You were taught that forgiveness means reconciliation, that if you truly forgave, you'd welcome them back fully. That holding distance meant you were bitter, cold, unforgiving. But that's not true. Real forgiveness doesn't ask you to stay in harm's way. It doesn't require you to sacrifice yourself to prove you're good. It doesn't demand you give access to people who've shown you they'll misuse it. You can release them internally without restoring them externally. Why should forgiveness require you to stay exposed? It doesn't. You're not being harsh. You're being precise. You're not punishing them. You're protecting yourself. Once you understand this, the way you respond changes. Not with words, with distance. You don't need to confront them. You don't need to explain what they did. You don't need to list the ways they've hurt you, or deliver a speech about boundaries, or wait for them to understand. Every time you explain, you give them something to push against. Every time you confront, you feed the cycle. Every time you talk, you negotiate your own worth. Stop negotiating. Confrontation is the trap. It keeps you engaged. It keeps you hoping. It keeps you waiting for them to see, to change, to care. They already know. Silence teaches faster than words ever could. No arguments, no explanations, no speeches, just consequence, silence, distance, reduced access, reclassification. They move from close to limited, from trusted to unsafe, from constant to occasional, from priority to background, not because you're punishing them, not because you're trying to hurt them back, but because behavior is the only language that changes dynamics. Words are negotiable. Behavior is not. When you stop calling, they notice. When you stop forgiving immediately, they notice. When you stop adjusting yourself to keep them comfortable, they notice. And for the first time, they feel the cost. Not because you explained it, because you removed yourself. What happens when you stop explaining yourself? The explaining is what kept you trapped. The explaining is how you kept giving them chances to twist the story, to reframe the hurt, to make you doubt what you already know. You don't owe them a conversation about why you're stepping back. Your presence is not a debate. Your absence is the answer. And once you do this, everything changes. So remember this: forgive so you're free. But listen carefully. Never forgive in a way that teaches people they can hurt you without cost. So remember this: forgive so you're free. But never forgive in a way that teaches people they can hurt you without cost. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever been in a situation where someone kept hurting you because they knew you would forgive? If you made it this far, you're among the 0.1% who see it clearly now. I want you to mark this moment. Type this in the comments. Today, I refuse to silence myself just to keep the peace. And if this gave you clarity, support the work by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for being here.